Mike Florio's new book, Playmakers, How the NFL Really Works and Doesn't, now available online wherever books are sold. And it's a bestseller here. Florio joining us in the news yesterday is Bruce Arians. In one of his last things that he said as the head coach of the Buccaneers, called out Florio and said that, well, go ahead. You can write about it, Mike. What did you make of Bruce Arians yesterday?
You know, I'm sitting there minding my own business, Dan, in my office, working on PFT, got a window open with the Buccaneers press conference. And I mean, if I'd have had a mouthful of water or coffee or, well, it was too early to have anything stronger than that, I would have spit it all over the computer screen. I couldn't believe it. And look, I like it. It just shows that they read and they heed and they listen and they pay attention. And I'm sure he's not thrilled with my speculation / somewhat informed discussion of how this all came to be. But
any chance that his, the way he announces retirement is actually real, like it's true?
Well, when has this ever happened? First of all, it's the first time since Jimmy Johnson left the Cowboys in March of 1994 that a coach has exited this late in the cycle. None of it adds up. He was all in. He was at the scouting combine. He was involved. He was involved in free agency. And the idea that Tom Brady coming back caused him to say, now's the time to leave. If anything, it would cause him to say, now's the time to stay. I was worried about what we're going to do without Tom Brady. Now Tom Brady is back. And 17 days after, this was the key for me, Dan. 17 days after Tom Brady ends a 40-day retirement, Bruce Arians is out. And there's never even the most remote suggestion that Tom Brady is troubled by that. Doesn't that tell us kind of everything we need to know? And I think we're underrating what Bruce Arians means to the football team on game day. But the fundamental problem here, I think, arose from the fact that Arians wasn't involved with the team most of the time, and that he would show up and become involved. And at a certain point, the folks who are grinding every day, busting their asses every day, are going to resent that. And I think that's where some of this professional friction came from. Doesn't mean there's personal friction. You know, the Arians fallback is we get along fine. Well, there's been plenty of people I've worked with over the years that I love them personally. Professionally, I just can't work with you anymore. It's possible that those two things can exist.
What do you think happened when Brady went to London?
Something. I mean, and it was so funny. He puts out that video of Cristiano Ronaldo saying, "You're done, right?" And he's like, and 2 hours later, he's back. I mean, he knew damn well what he was doing. I think he retired. And this is a take that Sims and I have kind of come up with after talking about it way too often over the past few months. The retirement wasn't something that he was forced into. His dad says, well, ESPN reported he's retiring, so he had to retire. Like that's going to be a real factor in your life decision to retire. I think he actively explored whether or not he could pull off a move to another team. The Dolphins were looking at Sean Payton and Tom Brady together. That's not happening if Tom Brady isn't at least interested in the possibility of partnering up with Sean Payton. Those thoughts aren't being had and entertained and acted upon by the Dolphins, who admit that they called the Saints to inquire about the availability of Sean Payton and were told, don't even waste your time, by former Dolphins GM Jeff Ireland, who's now the assistant GM in New Orleans. So I think part of that 40 days was, is there another place I can continue my career? And one of the benefits of being Tom Brady is you never have to order the code red. You never have to dirty your hands with, gee, I'd really like to come back, but I'm not happy with the coaching situation. That's something that happens 3 levels down, gets communicated 3 levels down from ownership of the Buccaneers, and it works its way up. And people, Jason Light said yesterday on Rich Eisen's show, Tom never made a demand. Of course he didn't make a demand. If you're Tom Brady, you don't have to make a demand. It's one of the benefits of being Tom Brady.
Is it your feeling or is it reporting?
Well, I think it's a combination of both. And I think that's kind of where we are in today's world. When you're plugged into the matrix 24 hours a day like I am, and you've been doing it for 20 years, you get an idea of what's really going on. For example, when Pete Carroll tells the world we have no intention to trade Russell Wilson, my first reaction was, there's the for sale sign, folks. They're willing to trade him. And I had all these Seahawks fans and Seahawks media, you're crazy, you're nuts, you're high, you're whatever. And then what happened? A week later, they have a deal to trade him to the Denver Broncos. So you develop a sense of what the patterns are, what the trends are, what the truth is, and what the BS is. And this one is so weird in comparison to everything else we've seen in the last 20 years or the last 40 years or the last 50 years. There's got to be smoke there. And where there's smoke, as we often know, there's fire.
I had some Seattle fans who blamed me for Russell Wilson getting traded because I had him on and he did that interview where he kind of aired his laundry. And I went, all I did is ask a question. Normally, Russ doesn't give you anything of great detail, and he gave me a whole lot there, and then I followed up, and that's why I said all along I thought we were going to have something similar to what we had with the Rams and the Lions, where Matthew Stafford and the Lions would mutually agree what's best for both is to divorce, and that's exactly what happened in that situation. We're talking to Mike Florio. The book is Playmakers, available online wherever books are sold. So Brady gets what he wants, I guess, with Todd Bowles. The only thing that I'll leave you with this one item. Does Bruce Arians have the autonomy to pick his successor? I mean, that's what was surprising, that it feels like ownership would say, we kind of want to know, what our plan is down the road. Bruce said, hey, I wanted to have Todd Bowles, and I'm all for Todd Bowles getting another chance. I just didn't know that Bruce would have that say, that power to name his successor.
Well, look, if what we're being told is true, and obviously I have my doubts, Bruce Arians put ownership in a very tough spot by walking away when he did. Because if I own a football team, I would at least like to know as soon as possible after the season ends that I'm going to be looking for a coach. Because I would at least like to have the opportunity to cast a wider net and consider my options. Maybe I come back to Todd Bowles at the end of the day, but I'd at least like to have the chance to try. What else are you going to do if you're the Buccaneers and your head coach leaves on March 30? You're going to start a search. Then you can't. Under the rules, no team is required to let you talk to any of their assistants under contract because March 1 is when that window closes. That's why the Rooney Rule doesn't apply. That's a loophole, by the way, that I think they're going to close. Because as soon as I saw that the Rooney Rule doesn't apply to any vacancies after March 1, I thought, oh boy, Jerry Jones is going to fire Mike McCarthy after March 1 and hire Sean Payton or elevate Dan Quinn. Now that Jerry Jones knows this exists, because it's the first time it's ever happened, he's going to use it, and they're going to close that loophole before he can.
All right, before I let you go, the Baker Mayfield story seems pretty quiet. Is it going to stay that way until the draft or after the draft?
I think both of these teams that are looking to trade veteran quarterbacks with significant salaries, the 49ers with Jimmy Garoppolo and the Browns with Baker Mayfield, I think they want to wait at this point to see what happens with the draft. That there's going to be maybe a team that is targeting a quarterback round 1 or 2. If they don't get him, then maybe a trade market emerges. At some point, though, it gets very awkward because you can't lock the guy out at the facility if he wants to show up. And if I'm Baker Mayfield, deal with me. I'm not going to go sit in the corner. You got to deal with me or you got to cut me. Even though these guys don't have no trade clauses, you have a lot of power when you're a starting quarterback. If a team is going to trade for you and you don't want to go there, good luck getting that team to give up any significant assets for that contract. That could be a mess for any team that tries to trade for Garoppolo or Mayfield. Mayfield's got a ton of power also because his salary is fully guaranteed. He's getting $18.8 million this year no matter what. So it's a mess for the Browns and for the 49ers. It's going to be one of the fun storylines to keep an eye on as the offseason continues. Also
with the Rams with Bobby Wagner, I was just thinking of that. They keep kicking the salary cap down the road, signing these guys. They don't need draft picks here. But Bobby Wagner signing, I thought it was a great pickup. I don't know cost-wise if it is. But this plan, the Rams keep buying into it. Your thoughts on Wagner?
Well, two things. 5 years, $50 million. I mean, how many times do we have to hear the big number?
Yeah.
And then see the real numbers and see the details and understand what the deal really is before we become skeptical of the big number. I'm skeptical of 5 years, $50 million, but 5 years spreads it out more under the cap. And here's the thing to remember about the cap dollars. It goes up every year. So $1 million in cap space this year means a lot more to a team than $1 million in cap space next year because the cap's going to be higher. It's a smaller percentage. That's why teams kick it forward because the cap's going to keep going up. And damn, with the gambling money, with the TV contracts, cap's going to be $300 million before we know it. So that's why these teams do it. And if you're the Rams and Aaron Donald on the line, Bobby Wagner at linebacker, Jalen Ramsey at corner, we're sleeping on the Rams. So much talk last year about the Buccaneers repeating, why aren't we talking about the Rams repeating? All the talent's left the NFC. The Packers are down. The Bucs are still going through a coaching change. We take for granted how good Bruce Arians is on game day. They could be down a little bit. And here are the Rams. They're right where they left off. And I think we need to be thinking about them as a team that gets back to the Super Bowl and maybe wins it again.
I'll tell Bruce Arians you said hello.
Please do.
Thank you, Mike. Have a great
Thank you,
weekend.
man.
The book is Playmakers. It's a great book. How the NFL really works and doesn't. Available online wherever books are sold.